Hello, this is Ed Markey speaking. Welcome to the Ed Markey podcast. Okay, so...
Let me know.
Oh,
man. So, welcome to another podcast. And I have with me today Jamaal Bowman, who is a congressman from the Bronx. But before that, he was a school teacher in the Bronx. He was a principal in the Bronx. So he's an education expert, but he's also somebody who believes in climate justice, in the threat that climate poses to our public school system. And Congressman Bowman and I have introduced the Green New Deal for public schools. So Can you tell me why that is so important to you?
Well, we have to save our planet first and foremost. We only have one, and the climate catastrophe is impacting the entire planet. And we have to shift every institution from our dependency on fossil fuels towards completely green, clean, renewable energy. And school buildings are a major part of that. You know, school buildings run on fossil fuels. Many of them have old infrastructure, so they're literally crumbling. We have issues of lead in the water in schools. We have mold, we have mildew, we have rodent infestations in some schools. And so it's important for us to reinvest in our schools, rebuild our public school infrastructure. And it's important for us to do this particularly in historically marginalized communities. So Title I schools in low-income communities, we target there, we rebuild the physical infrastructure, but then we also shift the mindset and consciousness of everyone in the community. And so the Green New Deal for public schools has to be part of the Green New Deal infrastructure, institution, initiative, so that we could get this done in Congress for the entire country.
So could you talk a little bit about environmental justice and the quality of too many public schools in our country in terms of even having air conditioning, having this late date, having removed the lead, removed the asbestos from the schools, which are a danger to kids.
No, absolutely. So the school that I founded, the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action Middle School, I founded the school in 2009. It was a brand new school building, so it's not very old, just a little over 10 years old. And the beginning of this school year, in that school, there was no air conditioning working in the school. And, when you go back to school in the beginning of September or late August, it's still summertime. It is super hot. Kids were sitting in, 80-degree classrooms or above. And, it's unhealthy. They get sick in that environment. That's one example. Another example is in many schools in New York City and across the country.
And by the way, it just snowed in New York City for the first time in 2 years.
So
it's getting warm.
It's getting warm. Also, in that school and many other schools, kids can't even drink from the water fountains because of the high presence of lead in the water in that school and many other schools. HVAC systems are out of date. Faucets do not work in bathrooms because of old infrastructure. I mentioned rodent infestation in some of the older buildings in places like Detroit. This has been a huge issue as well. There are schools without windows in some places, so you don't get any circulation. And in the Bronx is particularly prevalent because of the cross sections of highways that operate in the Bronx, from the Cross Bronx Expressway to the Henry Hutchinson Parkway. That's one of the reasons why you're 5 times more likely to die of asthma if you are a child in the Bronx than anywhere else in the country. So it's the school building itself, but it's also the communities in which the schools exist.
Now, part of this Green New Deal for public schools is also investing in teachers.
Yes.
Investing in the funding,
which
every public school should have access to, so that there's a democratization of access to opportunity through education, and it's not divided along whether you live in a wealthy suburb or you live in urban America.
That's right. So jobs, right? So construction jobs, union jobs, but also jobs for teachers, jobs for teacher assistants, jobs for school counselors, jobs for mentors and coaching. The exciting thing about the Green New Deal in general and the Green New Deal for schools specifically is it's our opportunity to rebuild the economy. It's our works progress administration moment in America where we're going to create millions of jobs, millions of good paying union jobs in a variety of areas to rebuild our economies. And the communities in which we're targeting are really important because these are communities that have been underinvested in for so long. So we need workforce development programs in these communities, beginning as young as we can, to make sure kids have the education they need and the workforce development they need. So that's teachers, again, school counselors, mentors, coaches, teachers, assistants, but also construction jobs as well. That's what we need.
When you made reference to the Works Progress Administration, not everyone necessarily knows what you're referring to. And so that goes back to the 1930s. President Roosevelt sees at the height of the Depression, you can't balance the budget. You have to invest in America if you want to come out of it. And so even in my own hometown of Malden, Massachusetts, which is a blue-collar community, they still have up the plaque in the high school, Malden High School, of the Works Progress Administration, coming in to help the educational system in Malden in the 1930s. So this is not a revolutionary idea. It's an old idea made new again by the challenges of today.
Yes, investing in the American people, investing in our most vulnerable communities and all communities. I mean, when you make those investments, you get a huge return in terms of our overall GDP, but also in terms of lower costs in areas like healthcare, lower costs in areas like jails and prisons and the justice system, and huge economic benefits to individuals, families, community, and the entire country. So it's a win-win-win. You invest in people and you have incredible outcomes, and that's what the Green New Deal for schools are all about.
So it's kind of interesting that previous generation that was much less wealthy than this generation of Americans in general, they were building beautiful red brick schools. They were building beautiful hospitals on top of the hill. And today, too many people say, oh, we can't afford to do that. And you say, well, you're at least 3 or 4 times wealthier than the preceding generation, which had wisdom, foresight, and investment in the future. So that's how I view the Green New Deal for public schools. It's just trying to channel the wisdom of earlier generations that even though they weren't the beneficiaries of it necessarily, they knew the country would be.
Well, there was also an investment in like human capital and human potential and our own self-determination. And when we talk about wealth, the wealth of human ingenuity, that is priceless, right? And so that exists today, and is something that we have undermined and not tapped into enough over the last several decades. And so, yes, we are wealthier in terms of our financial wealth, but that human wealth, just the capacity for people to be innovative and build things and create things, we still have that, even more so today than we did back then, to your point. And so, we got big fossil fuel tycoons controlling Congress. And as a result of that and many other special interests, we're not really tapping into the human capacity in the way we should be.
Yeah, and we're still giving tax breaks to the oil and gas and coal industry.
Yeah.
And you have other people who are saying, but we can't have tax breaks for wind and solar and energy efficiency and all electric vehicles and the public school system in the United States.
That's right. Yeah, it's we've given so much power to the private sector, and the private sector is undermining our ability to really invest in people, and that's the paradigm shift, and that's the behavior that needs to change.
Yeah. So we need livable future options for everyone, no matter where they live. But it has to start in the first grade or kindergarten when kids are just beginning the school system.
Man, it has to start at birth. It has to start right now from our hospitals. Our hospitals need to be green. Our communities need to be green. Our schools need to be green. It's just healthier. There was a study that showed the lack of green spaces in the community actually contributes to a rise in crime. Because the heat that comes off of the pavement impacts the cognitive development, psychology, and health of the people there and make them more stressed and frustrated, which leads to a rise in harm within that community. So actually more trees, more green spaces, more fields absorbs that heat so the people don't absorb it, and thus leads to better, again, public safety outcomes in that community. So it's across the board.
Yeah, so my father drove a truck for the Hood Milk Company, delivering milk. And his son is a United States Senator. So that was not on the scoreboard on the day that I was born. So that's really a fear that I have, is that too many people look at the kids who are coming up today, and they go, oh, they're not as good as the last generation. They're not as deserving. And they got this crazy Green New Deal philosophy, too, which is completely unrealistic. So what do you say to those oil company executives or rich fat cats that just don't want any part of their fortune used in order to create a green environment for school kids today?
Yeah, for them, I know it's about power and control and maintaining their wealth and control of the U.S. economy. My mother was a postal worker, right? And now I'm a U.S. congressman, and I'm an educator, so I know I'm biased, but our kids, regardless of background, regardless of circumstances, have unlimited potential. And this idea, this vision, a Green New Deal, is about us unlocking and tapping into that potential for the betterment of society. And the fossil fuel companies, if they're open to a just transition, which we are trying to work with them to make sure happens, they can help us build this better world. And they don't have to continue to get billions in tax breaks and control these large segments of the economy that they do.
Yeah, and when we were drafting the Green New Deal, yes, we talked about the climate crisis. Yes, we talked about the solutions, renewable energy. But we then added in a section that talked about intersectionality, talked about black and brown and marginalized communities historically to make sure we were dealing with the environmental justice issues. And then we took Franklin Delano Roosevelt's 1944 inaugural address. And in it, he called for everyone is entitled to a job. Everyone is entitled to health care. Everyone is entitled to an education. Everyone is entitled to a vacation. So we put that in, and all the Fox News people started to call that socialism. And we said, no, that's Franklin Delano Roosevelt. This is not new. This is what has always been the aspiration, or should be, for our country.
Yeah, we have socialism for the wealthy and capitalism for everyone else to fight and scratch and claw and kill each other for scarce resources. But, to your point, we should have a federal jobs guarantee and all the other things that you mentioned. Again, if we have those things, our economy is better and stronger for it in the long term. And then, I keep going back to this, we spend way less on our justice system, which incarcerates people for minor things in many parts of the country. And these are people who could be out contributing to the economy. Again, you have better health outcomes when people have access and opportunity and less stress and trauma in their lives. Right now, because we have a limited economy that only benefits a small percentage of people, there's a preponderance of stress and trauma in historically marginalized communities that manifests into harm for individuals and everyone within that community. And so investing in those communities with workforce development programs, green infrastructure, education, etc., reverses that trend and puts them and all of us on a pathway to better outcomes.
Because of the war on drugs, we incarcerated 2 million African-American young men in our country. And we owe an apology to that entire generation of African-American young men, because if we had invested the same amount of money in their education as we did in their incarceration,
Yeah.
we would have a far different country that we were living in today.
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
all comes back to a Green New Deal for public schools, that we're making the investment in the community up front.
That's it. And add to the 2 million incarcerated, probation and parole, which disenfranchises millions of people and takes away opportunity to even get back on your feet and get back into the workplace. And, one of the reasons why so many industrial jobs left the African-American community in particular is because of globalization. Again, these large companies were a part of a race to the bottom to find cheap labor in all parts of the world. And those factory jobs left, not just black and brown communities, but many working class white communities as well. And those jobs were never replaced with anything. And so again, you bring now, the numbers game and crack cocaine and heroin and, addiction then entered our communities. And that was the economy that people survived on while killing their own people.
Yeah.
It's self-destruction.
So now, if I can, and by the way, you're so great. Thank you for
Of course.
being here.
Thank you for your leadership.
But now we're going to play a game
Okay.
I like to call Big Oil or Movie Villain.
Okay.
Big Oil or Movie Villain.
All right.
And I'll read you a quote, and you tell me whether you think the person who said it was a big oil executive or a movie villain.
Okay.
Who said it? So here's the first one. The winds are such that it would be difficult to categorize them all.
That's a movie villain.
Well, the correct answer is Dan Easley of ExxonMobil, and who said that. Now, that's interesting because I don't know a lot of big oil wins since the Green New Deal got introduced, but that's ExxonMobil. So,
Okay.
you want another round?
Yes, of
All right,
course. We're gonna keep playing until I get two in a row.
Yeah, you're going to get
Well,
it.
let me get one first, and then we'll see
so-
about two.
Okay, here's the next one.
Okay.
If you're good at something, never do it for free.
Oh,
If you're good at something, never do it for
That's
free.
big
Oil
oil.
executive or movie villain.
Is that big oil? That's big oil.
Well, the correct answer is the Joker in
Oh
The
my
Dark Knight.
goodness.
But again, you're so right because big oil would never do anything for free. So it does apply to both.
That
of
sounds like something big oil, but they probably wouldn't say it out loud.
Yeah,
Or
we're
maybe
not
they
giving
would.
it away.
All
That's
right, hold on.
okay.
We got to keep going. I'm going to get the next one.
we'll
Hold
try
on.
one more.
All right.
them. And the next one is, we are not selling a product that is evil. We are not selling a product that is evil.
These are hard, man. Big oil, man. That's a guess.
Big oil. Mike Wirth,
All right.
CEO of Chevron. That was a trick question since they are selling a product which is evil.
That's right. That's right.
They're warming the planet. They're tipping consumers upside down at the pump to shake money out of their pockets to then endanger the planet. So you are so right on that.
And didn't we know about this? This is the other thing. You said that was ExxonMobil CEO?
Yep, Chevron.
Chevron? Didn't we know about the damage big oil does to the planet? Didn't we know about this like 50, 60 years ago? And wasn't there a campaign to bury the information so that we wouldn't, hurt the bottom line in the pockets of oil executives? I believe that's the case, isn't it?
It is the case. And in the same way, the tobacco industry knew
Yes.
that their product actually caused lung cancer, but tried to hide it.
Yes.
The oil industry then hired the very same PR people to hide the damage that the oil, gas, and coal industry did to the public health in the United States.
Do you hear this, America? Do you hear what the heck is going on here? This is why the campaign for a Green New Deal has to be implemented and enacted into law, and we need your help. This is crazy what Senator Markey just said. It's unbelievable.
So Jamaal Bowman, a voice for the future. And we're just so fortunate to have him on here.
Thank you.
The author of the Green New Deal for public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was awesome.